welcome back to the How to Podcast series. It's Dave with you. I hope you're doing well. Hope things are awesome in your podcast. Are they awesome in your podcast? Then, if not, let's get together and talk about it and see how we can help you get better in podcasting and help you see success. Because we all want this to be successful, right? We didn't start a podcast to fail, right? We started a podcast to succeed. And I want to help you with that. So as a reminder, I do have in my calendar a special spot just for you guys. There's a link in the show notes to get into my calendar for a free chat, you and I together. The main reason I want to do this is, I want to help you. And also, I want to meet you. So we have meetups. We have all different ways that we can connect with each other. But to have one-on-one time with you, you can come on with me and ask me anything about podcasting. Whether you're starting or you have a podcast, wherever you're at, I'd love to meet with you. And the link is not available on my website. Why? Because the link is for you, just you, and it's available in the notes below. That's the only place you can get the link, because it's for you, because you pressed play on this episode, and you and I are now best friends. Right? Yes. So I wanted to talk to you about something we did a question of the month in July of this year, where we put out a question to our community, and we've had some great responses around whether or not you as a podcaster listen to your own show. Do you do that? And answer the question then, why or why not? And we had some interesting responses come back, and you can click back into the library. You can see that episode. And I love having those question of the month episodes, because you get to come on and promote and shout out your show, and then as well answer the question and share your thoughts in response. It's really primarily focused on you promoting your podcast. We want more people to hear about your show. And the question and answer is just a good way to get you to get on and share about your show. That's really the main reason, to be completely transparent. The main reason is I want to shine all the light on you. So go over to howtopodcast.ca. Every month we have a question of the month, and you can get to us through our howtopodcast.ca website, and there's a SpeakPipe link, and leave your voice message. To all of those great people who are following us on Instagram and social media and responding with words, but not with your voice, please come over here to howtopodcast.ca and leave me an audio message so that I can bring your voice into the show. I really appreciate your feedback on the social platforms. Really hard to translate that into an audio experience. So please come and do that for us. If you've already done that on Instagram or wherever, come over here and leave us a voice message as well. So we're talking about why you should be your own podcast listener here on the How to Podcast series. So as a podcast creator, content creator, creating content is really only half of the battle, half of the process. Getting on the microphone, recording your episode, doing all the edits and putting it out there, that's just one part of it. Listening to your own show can actually provide valuable insights and benefits. So I've got a few things to kind of go over today. I want to talk about improving your craft, boosting your confidence, staying humble, protecting your image, and maintaining your purpose. So these are the areas we're going to cover off today here on the How to Podcast series, in around the fact that you should probably be one of your podcast listeners to your own show. Here we go. So number one, we're talking about improving your craft. Now, I'm not a huge arts and crafts person. I liked it in high school. I did start a business with my wife called Upcycle Canada, where we repurpose things people throw away and turn them into new things. So I do like working with wood and building things for businesses and for people. We have some amazing stuff that we've made, not really due to us, but due to the requests of our customers that have traveled the world. So you can actually go on Google Maps, Street View, go to Scotland, and you can see one of the things we created on the door of a house in Scotland. It came all the way from Canada to Scotland, and we made that. It was pretty amazing that we could have our stuff around the world. We have stuff in Mexico and Australia, all through Europe, through the US. It's great to see where our products go. Arts and crafts take a lot of effort, a lot of time and effort to figure out how to do these things and to be crafty. But we're talking about improving your craft around podcasting. By listening to your finished podcast, you can evaluate your production choices, like how does everything sound? Does it sound good? Did you have cool transitions? The music is great, everything. You can identify areas that you can improve on for yourself and your show. And you can actually analyze your performance objectively by listening through the ears of a listener, not through the ears of a podcaster. You can actually improve yourself and become a better speaker. You can become a better presenter. This will also lead you into awesome opportunities where maybe you can speak on stage. Remember that when we default to heavy editing in our podcast, taking out every little stammer and stumble and ums and ahs and all those things that people just seem to think that we have to remove every single piece of who we are. When you get up on stage, you don't have an editor sitting beside you, editing you in real time in front of a live audience. You don't have that. So are we really being truly realistic to who we are if we take out every blemish? It's kind of like those filters on Instagram that make you look cuter than you really are. I really don't use those filters because why? So I think that we're putting too many filters on our podcast when we heavily edit. Understand the word heavily edit what we do, because it might not be a true representation of who we are. By listening to your podcast, you can start picking up on those things that you say often that maybe you should say less often. Maybe you don't get to the point. Maybe you ask 3 questions instead of 1 when you're trying to ask 1 question. Maybe you cut off your guests. Maybe you talk over your guests. Maybe you talk too much. Maybe you don't talk enough. Maybe you're too loud. Maybe you're too quiet. Maybe you're really monotone and everything sounds like a chore. Sounds like a job. Or maybe you're just too distracted by everything going on around you that it makes it frustrating for your listeners. Improve your craft by listening to your show. It's really going to help you in the long run to create a better podcast for you and for your listener. Improve your craft by listening to your own podcast. Next, it's going to help you boost your confidence. What feels better in primary grade school, grade 6, 7, and 8? It's recess, it's lunchtime. You're outside with all your friends and we're going to play something. And we pick teams. Doesn't it feel good to be picked early in the selection process? Doesn't that build your confidence up when it's like, oh, I'll take Dave on my team? The opposite happens when you're like me and you're the last to be picked because we've run out of choices. That's kind of how I was picked for teams, and I'm still getting over it. Podcasting and listening to your own show can really help boost your confidence. By hearing your work as a listener, remember, not as a podcaster, but hearing your work as a listener can actually reinforce that you actually know what you're doing, that you're developing your skills and your knowledge. It can really help to self-affirm that you're on the right path and you're growing as a person. It's also going to help motivate you to continue creating your podcast. I love listening to my show because I am quite weird, and some of the things that come out of my mouth are just happening in real time. And when I hear them in real time, I just laugh, I smile. My wife shakes her head. She's like, oh my gosh, you're just the weirdest person I've ever met. And I'm really good at keeping that title up. It'll boost your confidence by listening back to your podcast. Again, through the ears of a listener. Listen to enjoy your podcast. Don't listen to be so self-critical and self-deprecating that you're like, oh, I could have done that better. Okay, well, sure. But at the same time, celebrate the fact that you're doing something that many people will never do. Many people are afraid to do. Many people don't even know they could do. Here you are, episode after episode, week after week, month after month, creating something and putting it out into the world where your friends and family think that you're strange. yet you show up on the mic because it brings you joy. And when people start reaching out to you, that's a real boost of confidence. So if we were lining up teams today, I want you to know you'd be one of the first people I'd pick to be on my team. Okay? Not the last choice, the first choice, because you're here. So I choose you for my team. Boost your confidence by listening to your show. The next thing you can do is, by listening to your show, it'll really help you to be a little more humble. When we listen to our show as a listener, not as a podcaster, remember, as a listener, regularly listening to our podcast is like a self-review. It's like those, when you have those job reviews and your boss brings you into that office and sits you down and goes over how you're doing year to year, month to month, whatever. And they give you your employee review. Is that fun? Well, most of the times I have a new boss every year and they don't even know my name, really. They look at their paper and go, okay, George? No. Ralph? No. Bob? No. Dave? Oh, yeah, Dave. You're doing so well. Okay. All right. Well, you don't even know who I am. So having bosses like that is fun. Especially, don't you love when you get a new boss and you have to train your boss on how to be your boss? And then they get to be your boss and tell you if you're doing your job right, yet 2 days ago they didn't even know what the job was? Have you ever had that? I've had that more than one time. Regular self-review of your podcast by listening to it again through the years of a listener, not a podcaster, will really help you to avoid becoming overconfident. I hear a lot of overconfident podcasters who put on an air of superiority and that they're the best thing that's ever walked the face of this planet. They do no wrong. They can do anything they want and never question me because I am the best. I'm God's gift to podcasting, everyone, and you're lucky to know me. Regular self-review helps you to avoid becoming overconfident. It also helps you to assess the impact of your thoughts and your ideas and helps you to maintain a balanced perspective. Stay humble, everyone. Stay humble and kind as a podcaster. There are far too many podcasters who have taken on an arrogance in their show. They talk down to people. That's why we have the How to Podcast series, because I want to battle back against people who treat people terribly in this space because they feel like, because they've been podcasting for X number of years, won X number of awards, got X number of accolades, that they are the voice of podcasting. First of all, with one episode, you are the voice of podcasting. With 10 episodes, you are the voice of podcasting. With 100 episodes, you are the voice of podcasting. And you can pick whatever podcaster that teaches podcasting. You can pick whatever person suits you the best. But for the all things great in this world, I'm asking you to step away from anyone that detracts from your message, makes you feel awkward and weird in their presence, says things that are hurtful, says things that are inappropriate, waves the flag of believing one thing but then saying the direct opposite. These people, when you align yourself with them as your go-to person, cast shade on you for making bad choices. You are who you surround yourself with. And if you're surrounding yourself with people who are negative in this space, you will become negative. It's a fact. So I'm encouraging you to go through and make sure that you're aligning yourself with people who align with you. I'm hoping that by listening to the show and listening here like 14 minutes in, that you're aligning with the message of the How to Podcast series, that you're finding some value in what I'm presenting here, and that there's something about me that is either welcoming or accepting or safe for you. And you would feel safe telling somebody about this show. I can give you a list of podcasts, which I wouldn't do because I don't want to be the same as the person I'm talking about. I can give you a list of podcasts about podcasting that are not my recommended shows for you to listen to, because they're like a cavity. They ache. They just ache, and they're painful, and they won't make you better. So, but I can't direct you to anywhere that you don't want to go. So if it's not the How to Podcast series, I really appreciate you listening and being here. But find the community that works for you. Whether that's ours or not, find a community to podcast with and stay humble, and make sure you find a podcaster who teaches podcasting that's humble and that has you in mind, and they're not there to promote themselves. Any podcast that starts off with how great they are makes me want to skip right away, because that's not the person. I'm not here for you as the host. I'm here for me as a listener. And that's kind of how I try to focus my podcast. Stay humble, everyone, and stay kind. The next thing is to protect your image. Protect your image by listening to your own podcast. It really allows you to ensure that you're making a good impression. I can tell you, again, there's podcasters that teach podcasting that have a terrible first impression, where they even will tell you, listen to me multiple times because I have to grow on you. The other thing that grows on you is mold, dust, and all of that. Those aren't good things, everyone. So I would not advise you to listen to me on multiple occasions so that I numb you into listening to me. I would ask you to listen to one episode, and if it's not for you, then thanks for listening. But make sure you're making a good first impression, not third, fourth, fifth, 10th impression. First impression. A first impression is a first impression. When my dog meets you and growls at you, that's a first impression, and I trust my dog. You might not be a good person. When my dog wags his tail and goes, this person's the best ever, and tosses a ball to you from his mouth to you, you're in. So even my dog is a better gauge of first impressions than most of the things I see online. Ensure you're making a good first impression with your podcast from the beginning, middle, and end, how you show up on social media, how you show up in person, how you interact with your community. Make a good impression with your show. Also, by listening to your show and protecting your image, it helps you to catch and correct any mistakes quickly. One thing I do for Living the Next Chapter, my wife Jennifer helps me with this, because I have 435 episodes in 3 years, and I talk to 25 people a week, the potential for mistakes is very high. By the time I go through the editing, because I edit the same day, usually that's the day I record, I get it out to YouTube probably a day or two after, on average. And what I do is I put them all up into private. It's a private release. My wife Jennifer goes in and listens to the entirety of the podcast to make sure there's no big gaps and no things where I talk over my guests or mistakes or things are slightly out of alignment and we talk over each other all the time. All these little things. And she just comes back and gives me a list of, okay, Dave, great effort, but here are the things you need to fix. So I have somebody in my corner who is there for me. And maybe you need that. But it does help you to catch and correct your mistakes. Because again, once you can always go back and make an update in the future, but it will go out. People will interact with it and go, that feels a little bit, feels a little off, this podcast. Catch and correct your mistakes by listening to your own podcast and protect your image. As well, it helps you to present yourself to your audience as your best self. And I think that's what you want. You want to have a best first impression. You want to show up in the world so that first-time listener who's here, like you, that's listening to the show for the first time right now, you've never heard any other episode of this show, you want to present yourself in the best light possible. Listening to your own podcast will definitely help you to ensure that you're putting out your best self to your audience. As well, we want to maintain our purpose. When we started our podcast journey back at episode 1 here in the How to Podcast series, we're at episode 280 now, plus all the Daily Daves and all the other stuff. When we went back to episode 1, we were talking about identifying your why. Your why also leads into your purpose. And by reviewing your episodes and listening back to your shows, it helps you to review that you're staying true to your podcast mission. You're staying true to your why. You confirm that you're actually headed towards the goals that you set for your show. You have goals, right? You're not just talking on a microphone and hoping for the best, or you have a goal for this. And you want to ensure that your content serves its intended purpose. Are you serving your guest when you're hosting a guest on your show? Are you serving your audience? Are you serving the content? Are you serving your community? You want to make sure that you're maintaining your purpose in your podcast. And by listening to your own show, it's going to help you to stay true and confirm that you're meeting your goals and ensure that your content serves its purpose. All of these things included, as we kind of look back at these, why we should be listening to our own podcast as a listener, again, not as a podcaster, but as a podcast listener. It's going to help you to improve your craft. It'll boost your confidence. It'll help you to stay humble and kind. It'll help protect your image, and you can maintain your purpose and know you're on the right path. By becoming your own listener, you're going to gain valuable insights that are going to help you grow as a podcaster and create better content every episode. My biggest hope for you as a podcaster is for you to not get 1,000 listens this week when you have 10 last week. No. I would love if you had 10 listeners last week to have 11 this week. And I would also love that if you went from 10 to 11, that those 11 people listen to the entirety of your podcast. Like to this point. Like all the way to the end of the episode. Not just the first minute, which is what generally counts as a listen. That's 1 minute out of 22 minutes is really, wow, that's really short. They wouldn't have heard any of this that we're talking about right now if they just stayed for the first minute. But congratulations. Yay, everybody. You got a download. Woohoo, go celebrate. But nobody heard anything you said. But you got a download. I would much rather know that my listeners are listening to the end of my podcast than to that they listen to the beginning of my podcast. So you being here right now proves the point that staying to the end of the podcast is a good thing. You'll see it in your stats. If you post to YouTube, you're going to see where people drop off. And probably on YouTube, most people are gone already. That's a given. But again, let's go back to my strategy on YouTube. I just treat YouTube as a backup drive, kind of like a Google Drive, Dropbox. YouTube is my backup drive. I'm just hosting everything there. And if I ever stop paying for my hosting site, everything I've ever done is on YouTube. And it lives there. Maybe forever. I don't know how YouTube does YouTube, but it's there. And I don't have to pay for backup storage. So my YouTube strategy is I'm not there to make money. I'm really not interested in growing my followers. Hit that bell, smash that bell, hit the like. No, I'm really not there for that reason. I'm an audio podcaster leveraging YouTube as a backup drive. That's it. Really, that's it. And I just want you to understand that as you create podcasts, as you put your content out into the world, people are going to be interacting with it. And by becoming your own listener, you get valuable insights that are really going to help you grow. I want to see you grow, and I want your podcast to get better. And to that end, I mentioned it at the beginning, and I'll do it here at the end as well. In the notes, on your phone or on your computer, whatever you're listening to on right now, your tablet, if you scroll into the notes section attached to this, down at the bottom is going to be a link. That link is for you. That's really not for anyone else. Again, it's not on my website. It's a special link into my calendar that gives you opportunity to come in and have a conversation with me. We can talk about whatever you want. Dave, how do I do better episode titles? How do I name my show? How do I start? How do I grow? How do I make money? How do I find more listeners? How do I keep my listeners? How do I do social media? What should I do? I know you have questions that may or may not have been addressed so far in 280 plus episodes of the How to Podcast series. I know you have questions. I still have questions every day. So I would love to meet with you, A, because you're awesome and I'd love to support you. But B, I'd like just to have time with you where you can ask me anything. And you have my undivided attention. So I'll just keep creating space for this. I've been doing this for years, but I haven't really put it out there to the community because there is a free link on my website, howtopodcast.ca, to get on my calendar. But that's just a general link that's open to the world. This link in the show notes is only open to you. So you've listened to 25 minutes of my show. Thank you for being here. That link is for you, and I would love for you to use it. And use it often, as many times as you need to. I am in the future, transparently, I am going to be developing a coaching program. This is going to give me more experience in coaching, which I love. But it's free. I'm not here to sell you anything. I have nothing to sell you. I just want to help you. And I want to be that podcaster that you can trust, who's kind and humble and willing to serve you. And I hope that comes across episode to episode throughout all the things you listen to here in the podcast. And if you haven't gone back in the catalog, I'd love for you to go back and listen to some of these amazing guest co-hosts that have been on the show. These people are truly amazing. And I'm so blessed to have them part of our little community here. So if you need any help, use the link down below in the show notes. Come over to howtopodcast.ca. Leave me a speak pipe. I'd like to hear your voice. It makes me happy. And I can't wait to talk to you next time here in the How to Podcast series. I would love for you this week to go listen to your latest episode of your podcast. And how do you feel when you finished? Let me know. howtopodcast.ca. Thanks for being here, everybody. Talk soon. Hey, thanks for being here at the end of the podcast. This is just for you because you're still here. Thank you for your support for the podcast. Thank you for listening to the show, sharing it with other podcasters. Maybe somebody you know is thinking about starting a show. I would love for you to say, hey, wait. You should go check out the How to Podcast series. It's got everything you need. And Dave as well is included. You get one free Dave with the How to Podcast series. I'm included with it. So kind of a bundle thing you get. To that point, mentioning it in the podcast, definitely want to remind you here at the end, there's a link in the show notes. Starting it this summer, I'm working through this. It's a way for us, you and I, to have a conversation around podcasting. I want to help you. And I've been doing this for people who listen to the show now for almost 3 years. And I just haven't been promoting it as a thing. So I'm now promoting it as a thing. I want to spend time with you. I kind of would love to hear your voice. We're going to jump on Zoom together. We're going to talk about your podcast. You get time one-on-one with me, 30 minutes in my calendar, completely free, no strings attached. You don't have to buy a blender or a vacuum or none of that stuff. No, just us. I just like to help you. And whether you're thinking about starting a show or you have a show, you want to grow your show, whatever it is, I'd love to meet you, talk about your struggles, your questions, work together. And I am eventually developing this into more of a coaching program for podcasters. But I'm starting with my best friends first, for free. So if you're interested, you listen to the show, and I appreciate you. Link in the show notes. Let's get together and talk podcasting, okay? You and me. Let's talk. Let's talk soon. See you. Thanks.